Good morning, everyone. My name is Chuck, and I am the Executive Director of Central Counties Tourism. Thought we would give it a couple of minutes here, just as we're getting all of the attendees into this webinar. So I can see lots and lots of people are joining in, which is fantastic. I think we've got just over 100 people who have registered, plus our board, which is a great turnout. It's as many as we get in person, and I do wish that we were in person here today. So it's 10:01. I'm going to give this to 10:02, and then we'll get started because some attendees will probably join in just for the non-business portion. So while we're going through, just as we're waiting, I just want to go through what we can expect today. So we have the business portion of the meeting that takes place from 10 to 10:30-ish. Where it's the first time we've ever done one by webinar and virtually. So we've timed it out as best we can. So we think it'll take about half an hour. And then we've got the speakers and our updates, and that'll take place from around 10:30 to 11:30 today. Just for some housekeeping rules, just so you know, the meeting is being recorded. All the attendees are muted. For the business portion of the meeting, the board of directors are the only voting members of the corporation, and they will be voting and seconding motions in a dedicated board chat box. So you're not going to see that, but you'll hear Nancy and know the outcomes of each of those votes. For the speakers session, we're going to invite the attendees to ask questions in the Q&A function, and I'm going to try to be moderating that as best I can to make sure that each of our speakers hears from you through me. So if you take a look somewhere on that at the bottom, it might be in more, there's a Q&A function that you'll be able to take a look at. As we are going through, like always, we'd love you to be talking about us. So we have our Twitter hashtags is at CCT_RTO6. And oh, sorry, that is our business name, and the hashtag is at CCTAGM20. All right, so we're going to get started in a second. As always, we always think you should have a fresh cup of coffee in front of you, and feel free to get up and move around. The good thing about being virtual is you can just put the speakers on loud and wander through the house. So I'm going to pass this meeting over to our board chair, Nancy Malik, who will take over and go through the business portion.
Thank you, Chuck. I'd like to call this meeting to order, but first I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. We begin today by acknowledging that we walk upon the traditional territories of Indigenous peoples, and we recognize their history, spirituality, culture, and stewardship of the land. We are grateful to all Indigenous groups for their commitment to protect the land and its resources, and we are committed to reconciliation, partnership, and enhanced understanding. As we move through our business portion of the AGM, I will ask our voting members of the corporation, our board of directors, to ratify our motions. We will now start with our first motion. Bear with me one more. That the board of directors approve the agenda as presented on June 24th, 2020. May I have a seconder? Thank you, Kelly. All in favor? Carried. I'd like to motion that the Board of Directors approve the AGM minutes of June 19th, 2019. May I have a seconder? Thank you, Kathy. All in favor? And carried. I'd like to thank you all on this call today for being here. I know each of you have felt the effects of the first half of this year. We're going through a lot of intense times at this moment, and our industry has experienced significant bumps along the way. Thankfully, RTO6 is here to help us maneuver through this and to bring new initiatives forward to ensure our tourism businesses are supported and adaptable to change. On behalf of the board, I would like to thank Chuck and his team for their incredible efforts in supporting the stakeholders and in advocating our needs to the right ears. Now let's get down to business. To present the corporation's audited financial statements, I call on Glenn Smith from MNP LLP.
Thank you, Nancy. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm sure somebody will let me know if you can't. I'm just going to share the financial statements and hope that you see them up on the screen. So as mentioned, my name is Glenn Smith. I'm a partner with MNP LLP in Oshawa. We are the auditors for Central Counties Tourism. I'm going to take you through the audited financial statements, explain a little bit about the process, and then be available to answer any questions that you have. Hopefully you see a screen right now that says Zone 6 Regional Tourism Organization Financial Statements for the year ended March 31st, 2020. Right behind that title page is the Independent Auditor's Report. You'll notice that these financial statements are marked as draft, subject to board approval. So once the board approves the financial statements, they'll sign what's called a representation letter. They'll date it. We will then date the auditor's report and remove draft from the financial statements. The auditor's report is a clean, unqualified report, which means that we've done an audit and we find no material misstatements and that you can rely on the financial statements as presented to paint an accurate financial picture of Central Counties tourism. So moving on, the pages now are marked at the bottom, numbered 1 through 9. Page 1 is the statement of operations. Keep in mind this is for the year ended March 31st, 2020. Revenues were $2,200,235, down from the previous year, but expenditures were set accordingly with that revenue number. So expenses were reduced to $2,169,648, leaving an excess of revenue over expenses, or surplus, if you will, of $30,587 for the fiscal year. The next page is the statement of changes in unrestricted net assets. Think of it as an accumulated surplus. If it was a business, it would be your retained earnings. These are the unrestricted net assets available for future purchases. And that number is $212,855. The opening balance was $182,268. You add to that the current year surplus that we discussed of $30,587, and you arrive at your total. Pages 3 and 4 is the statement of financial position, more commonly referred to as a balance sheet. It shows the financial picture as at March 31st, 2020. Assets of Central Counties included cash, short-term investments, accounts receivable, HST recoverable, and some prepaid expenses. Total $588,293. Accounts payable and accrued charges, expenditures incurred to March 31st but paid subsequent to year end. $375,438, leaving you again with that accumulated surplus of $212,855. So the next page is page 4. This is a schedule that is required by CPA Ontario and CPA Canada. It's a statement of cash flows. It's not the easiest schedule to follow, but essentially what it does is it reconciles the opening and closing cash position of the organization and shows you how those funds were used. So your cash at the beginning of the year was $396,976. Activities during the year resulted in a decrease in cash of $37,580 to arrive at the cash at the end of the year, $359,396. Pages 5 through 9 are notes to financial statements. I'll go through them quickly. Most of these notes are recurring, so they're there every year. Note 1 is a description of the organization. Note 2 is very long and outlines many of the accounting policies used to prepare these financial statements. Note 3 talks about economic dependence. Obviously, the organization gets its funding from the ministry, so it is dependent on the ministry for that funding and basically to stay open as an organization. Due to Ministry Note 4, we do not report any potential amount that will be clawed back by the ministry. At this date, that amount is unknown, and in the last 2 years, there have been 0 amounts clawed back. That's basically what that note's saying there. Note 5, just a little bit about financial instruments. And then Note 6 is something you're going to see on every financial statement, whether it be not-for-profit, a profit-oriented company. We now have to report on the potential impact of COVID-19 on various companies and organizations. Think of it almost as a going concern note. But you can see here that Central Counties is minimally impacted, if at all, by COVID. Certainly not when you compare it to other businesses. That is the last note. The last 2 pages just give you a breakdown of budget to actual. So what will happen now is the board will approve the financial statements. And again, we will remove the draft and finalize the statements once those statements are approved. Is there any question? I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to answer questions my first time using Zoom, but if there are any questions as it pertains to the audit or the financial statements, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, we will. What we'll do is the board members, if they have any questions, can type them into the chat box, and I will answer them.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Appreciate that. We have a motion to approve the financial statements, and the motion is that the audit.
Sorry, Nance. Just 1 second. Just want to make sure there's no questions, and none have come in. So please continue on.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the financial statements, and that motion is that the audited financial statements for the year end March 31st, 2020 be approved. May I have a motioner? Thank you, Gary. For a seconder? Thank you, Mike. All in favor? And carried. We have a motion to appoint the auditors for the corporation. The motion is that the MNP LLP be appointed as external auditors for Central County Tourism for the fiscal year commencing April 1st, 2020, with remuneration to be fixed by the Board of Directors. May I have a seconder? Or I'm sorry, a motioner. Thank you, Jim. And a seconder? Thank you, Sharon. All in favor? And carried. Oh, bear with me here, folks. Please forgive me. Many screens on right now. Central County's tourism is governed by a board of directors that serve up to 2 3-year terms on the board. The board of directors are the voting members of the corporation. Bylaw number 1 states, subject to paragraph 11 of the bylaws, that each of the annual meeting of members, a number of directors equal to the number of directors retiring, shall be elected for the terms up to 3 years by the voting members. For the 2020-21 board year, there were 2 vacancies, Director at Large and Durham Representative. Nominations for these positions were received and reviewed by the nominating committee for recommendation to the board. The board is recommending that 2 nominees be included in the 2020-21 slate of directors, and those nominees are John Coletto, Director at Large, and Amanda McDonald, Durham Representative. I'd like to present the motion to approve the 2020-21 slate of directors. And that motion is that the Board of Directors approves the following slate of directors to serve on the Central County's Tourism Board as of June 24th, 2020. Tony Alanis, Director at Large, Orma. Dwayne McCulkin, Canada's Wonderland. Angela Coletto, York, McMichael Canadian Art Collection. Jim Beachy, York, Georgina Chamber of Commerce. Karen Stone, York, Town of Georgina. Gary Brown, Headwaters, Orangeville Blues and Jazz Festival. Jeff Duncan, Headwaters, County of Wellington. Brandon Picard, Durham, Regional Municipality of Durham, Durham Tourism. Kelly O'Brien, Durham, Galen Weston Center for Food, Durham College. Mike Whiston, Durham, Uxbridge Tourism Advisory Committee. Sharon Wilcox, Headwaters, Town of Caledon. Tina Robert, Director at Large, Woodbine Entertainment Group. Sergei Petrov, York, York Region Arts Council. John Coletto, Director at Large, Holiday Inn Express and Suites Vaughan. Amanda McDonald, Durham, Oshawa, BIA, and myself, Nancy Malik, Director at Large, Museum of Dufferin. I'd like to ask for a motioner for this motion. Thank you, Tony. And a seconder? Thank you, Dwayne. All in favor? Carried. We would like to recognize our outgoing director, Kathy Bertolick, who for the past 5 years has made outstanding contribution to the Central County's Tourism Board of Directors. Kathy is the Executive Director of Ontario Farm Fresh, and during her tenure on the board, she shared her knowledge and experience in the agritourism sector, event planning and development strategy to assist us in our strategy and planning. I want to express our sincere thank you for your commitment and many hours of work you put in during your years on the board. Thank you very much, Kathy. This concludes the business portion of the AGM. So I would like to make a motion that with no further business arising, the Board of Directors hereby adjourn the formal business AGM meeting. May I have a seconder? Thank you, Jeff. All in favor? And carried. Now, I don't really need to introduce this gentleman. I think he's known to everyone. He is our fabulous Executive Director, Chuck Thibeault.
Thank you. That was really, really, really fast. Sorry, I've opened up the question and answer. Jordan, you had asked, how do we move and vote? The only voting, the business meeting's over, but the only voting members are the board of direction or board of directors. So we're about 10 minutes ahead of schedule. So why don't we, before I go on to my formal presentation, assuming that there are people that are going to log in at around 10:30 just to listen to the presentations, open up the question and answers, Sandra, and perhaps I can take some questions for the next couple of minutes. So if anyone has a question, you can type it in and I'll see what I can do to answer. And if worse comes to worse, we'll start a couple minutes early because I'm not sure that I'm the one that people are here to listen to. I'm sure it is more the other two presentations. And oh, there we go. So Stefan, you're asking if Central Counties ever consider a more democratic structure where those who are actually impacted by what you do will have a say on who is a director. The nominations go out every single year to every stakeholder. We don't have a paid membership. So right now we are structured that only the board of directors are the quote unquote voting members, but the process we take to get new board of directors is open to everyone. And we actually try to actively get out and get as many people as we can. And then what we do is we've got a whole board competency matrix that's put together. And in that matrix, we see where we're missing some skill sets. And then we try to match all the candidates and we pick the best ones that are suited to what our needs are for that time. So that's how we do it. And Stefan, you give me a call anytime. We are always looking for committee members too. Most of our stakeholders are so busy working in their business, it's tough to find the time, but we always would love to have non-board members on our committees. And our committees really are the ones that are making those decisions, the finance committee, the marketing committee, the partnership committee, all of those things on a regular basis. You don't need to be a board member to do that. Oh, Jordan is asking what golf course. I wish I was at Royal Ashburn, but I am not. I am in my bedroom, which is not near as pretty as Royal Ashburn. So I'm hoping to get there at some point in the near future to play a round. It's a beautiful course. All right, so I think I'm just going to get started because my stuff's going to take about 10 minutes or so. There's been a lot of negative for this industry in the last few months, and it's been tough. And what I would really want to focus on today is a couple of things. One is I want to talk about some of the fantastic entrepreneurship that I've seen come out of this. If nothing else, the people who make up this industry are resilient, and they have an entrepreneurial spirit, and they like to make noise, and they like to make things happen. Some of the things that we have seen we've seen happen in the last few months. We've seen farms who are starting to work together, who have been putting together these awesome virtual markets where people can order online and get it delivered to their homes. We've been working with an event operator who has completely designed an outdoor event space that can be, 200, 300, 400 people set in isolated family unit blocks that fit the guidelines for social distancing. We've had some fantastic people who are working together, like a winery and a cheese shop, who are working together to send people the wine and the cheese, and then online virtually people can do their pairings, right? So they can make some money as they go. There's a lot of incredible stories that are going on. I'm just going to stop for a second. We've got a question from Rick. Restaurants are collecting contact information from one guest of every party dining for contact tracing. Are tourism-related businesses with transient customers being asked to do the same? It really depends on the municipality. I think that it makes sense. I was down in Niagara on the weekend, stopped in at a winery to pick up some wine for my dad for Father's Day, and that's exactly what they did. They took my name, my cell phone number, and they've marked it all down, the time I was in, the time I was out. So I will continue on. I lost my train of thought, though. That happens every once in a while. So when this hit, we realized that a lot of places were shutting down, and we wanted to make sure that our stakeholders were still top of mind with our audiences, and keep it. So we started to work directly with our stakeholders. We built out a phenomenal virtual market, and I'm just going to open up. So right now on the virtual market, we've got over 140 stakeholders featured in the virtual market, and links to 11 municipalities plus the downtowns of Durham BIA site. So the idea here is it's, if you've been open and you have the options for curbside pickup or delivery and that sort of stuff, you're featured on this site, and then as people find you, just say you're in Oshawa, and then they would be able to click and say, well, if I'm going to be heading there anyway, what else can I do? And you click on that and you go right to the Oshawa BIA to see what else is open within that area. So there's a lot of great opportunities for people to do that. Right now we're averaging about just over 400 visits a day to our site, which is pretty phenomenal. And the other thing we did is we started to help develop a lot of virtual content for our stakeholders. We bought a couple of GoPros that have been out, and if you want to do some virtual content, let us know, and we will we can get those GoPros out to you and help storyboard up some ideas. I think it's been a really cool thing. It's not just tourism's about economics. It's about trying to make some money. So everything we're doing, started early on, was to try to keep the stakeholders in central counties top of mind, so that when it was safe to come back, we would be able to, they'd be, oh, I should go there because I saw this, and they did some really great stuff. It was built out as a way to ensure that we were on their mind and a catalyst for travel when they felt safe to do so. As we're hitting into stage 2, now we're using that to try to, as people are opening up, get them to come out and visit. So we'll do a lot more safe messaging. Now, last week or the week before, on the Minister's Tourism Town Hall, she was talking about some new funding that was coming to the RTOs to support some of the local shop local initiatives, because, and we're going to find out more in a little bit from the survey data, the thinking is that as we reopen, it's going to be hyper local. We need to start with the local community who are going to their places that they feel comfortable going because they live there, and then it's slowly going to expand outwards from that. So it will be, we're not sure yet. I haven't got the details of that yet. As soon as we do, we'll be sharing it through our B2B news. And we'll be working with our communities and our DMOs to put some programs together that are going to help the stakeholders. Everything we've been doing has been to assist the stakeholders to the best of our ability. And a lot of it also has to do with listening to what the stakeholders have said. And I had an opportunity a couple of weeks ago to speak in front of the Standing Committee of Finance and Economic Affairs for the province. And really, as an RTO, we're not in a position of advocacy, but in this instance, you know, we've got a minister who's on our side. She wants the government to know what you're going through. She wants us to say everything we can about what we're hearing. So I had that opportunity, and what I'd like to do is read you my deputation, because it really, I think it speaks to what we believe in. It speaks to what we've been hearing. So if you'll indulge me, I'm just going to spend a couple minutes going through my remarks that I made, and then we can open it back up for questions. So for years, the word tourism has been a barrier for success in the province of Ontario. And that's because it conjures an image of a group of people wearing tilly hats, Hawaiian shorts with socks and sandals, getting off a tour bus with cameras at the ready. The truth is, the vast majority of tourists are Ontarians who have traveled to a community where they don't live or work to spend some of their hard-earned disposable income. They don't regard themselves as tourists any more than the communities they visit recognize them as such. But that community is benefiting from new money being left in their cash registers. Since taking the post of Minister of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries, the Honourable Lisa MacLeod has spoken of the double bottom line, referring to the contribution that businesses that make up her portfolio have on the province. The effects of the COVID-19 pandemic have shone a spotlight on this truth. Tourism is a byproduct of a vibrant community. The art, culture, heritage, attractions, sports, public spaces, and hospitality that make a community a wonderful place to live and work are also the same reasons people choose to visit. We often speak of the economic impact of tourism in Ontario, but that's only telling a fraction of the story. Tourism businesses, from community museums to Canada's Wonderland, rely on locals for their bread and butter. Because of this, the revenue numbers and staffing numbers for tourism are only a percentage of the revenues and staff of each business as a whole. And that's why the province recognizes 200,000 tourism-related businesses, but only 400,000 staff attributed to tourism. But the impact each of those businesses has on their communities is 100%. When a business closes, the community loses 100% of the revenue it brought to the community, and 100% of the staff and the wages they were able to spend within that community. The economic impact for tourism may be $36 billion, but the economic impact of the businesses that make up the tourism sector is exponentially higher than that and spread to every corner of the province. The first tourism business to close within a community is like a crack in the dam that protects the vibrancy, both social and economic, of that town. And every business that closes afterwards places the community in a deficit position of being able to attract residents and new businesses, not to mention visitors. The issue is that if other provinces do a better job of maintaining the vibrancy of their communities, Ontario will lose their competitive advantage of being the best place to live, work, and visit. When it comes to the current support measures for business, many are falling flat for the businesses that make up the tourism industry. And that's because the vast majority of their revenues are perishable. If you need a new car, but find yourself in a position because of COVID-19 that you can't afford one at the moment, you still need a new car, and you're going to go purchase one when things improve. But if you visit an attraction or in a restaurant 3, 4, 5 times a year, you aren't going to double up your visits once they reopen to catch up. You're going to go back to your normal routine of visitation. And this means that the tourism-related businesses forced closed by the pandemic have lost 100% of the revenue they would normally have made during their closure, with no chance to recover it. Loans for these businesses are not the solution, because it is just layering on debt, which may have just be delaying the inevitable. So how does the province help? Well, on a call several weeks ago, Premier Ford challenged the sectors that make up Minister MacLeod's portfolio to come up with reopening processes and protocols that meet provincial guidelines like social distancing. Well, they met that challenge. In the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario's written submission, they were recommending, and I am endorsing here, that businesses that demonstrate they can meet the current provincial safety guidelines be permitted to open now rather than lumped together in a phased approach. For many businesses, even with the reduced capacity social distancing brings, it could mean the difference between survival or insolvency. And don't worry about how long it will take some businesses to reopen. Give the green light and the businesses will open as soon as they can. Insurance companies have not been honoring business interruption claims that protect the revenue lost by the mandated closures. It would be great if the government could talk with the insurers about creating a relief pool of funds, much like they did in New York after 9/11. The businesses may only get pennies on the dollar compared to what full coverage was supposed to be, but at this point, some is better than none. Fix and extend the commercial rent relief program to at least the end of the summer. This will be a great benefit to many of the businesses in the industry because even when they do get open, it will be at a fraction of their normal capacity. And it would be great if a fund was created to assist businesses with the new unbudgeted expenses they will have to incur to prepare themselves for reopening. Things like plexiglass shields, touchless faucets, hand washing stations, and PPE can cost thousands of dollars, even for the smallest business. These businesses have seen no revenue for 3 months, and many will find it difficult to find the resources to pay for these additional costs. A similar program was just announced in PEI. What I hope you've taken from this brief presentation is the importance of keeping Ontario communities vibrant so that people choose to move here or stay here. Companies choose to lay down roots here, and visitors from across the world look at us as a destination of choice when it is safe to travel. Thank you. So that is what I was able to present to the standing committee. Some things are starting to change. I looked at Niagara Falls went into stage 2 or phase 2 last Friday, and a bunch of businesses on Clifton Hill that are really a phase 3 business were permitted to open. And that's because the council approached the ministry and said they've shown they've got the safety protocols in place. We need tourists. We need the business back. We want these people to reopen, and they were able to reopen. So there's hope. There's opportunity for us to move on. So I've got a question here. As regions focus on hyper-local tourism, do you think there could be opportunities for furloughed travel industry professionals to volunteer, contribute their time and experience working with central counties and DMOs? I think so. There's always opportunities to use the expertise of the industry to help others within the industry. So Sunny, if you want to reach out to us afterwards, please feel free to do that. That'd be fantastic. So we are at 10:34. Oh, is that presentation available to be shared on social media? Oh, well, thank you, Lisa. It's wonderful. What I will do is I will take that presentation that I made, and we will put it up on our B2B website, and you can use parts of it. Feel free to share it and use anything you can. We want to be the one thing that's been phenomenal about this is that the tourism industry it's such a big beast. There are so many different sectors that play a role in the tourism industry, and in really good times, when everyone's going ahead full steam, there's a lot of fracturing that takes place, and sometimes there's not a lot of cooperation, or not as much cooperation and collaboration between the sectors that there could be. This pandemic has really pulled this industry together. And Brandon at Durham Tourism, he holds bi-weekly calls with all of the municipalities to find out what's going on and how do we help each other out. And we sit on that call to see how we can support. Same things taking place in York and in Durham. The amount of collaboration to try to help the stakeholders get through this has been incredible. Anything within our power, we're here to help. And every newsletter that we write, we ask you to to write in to let us know what more we can do. Our focus has always been, and our mandate isn't going to change with this, we are working towards helping the stakeholders be better prepared to have success for themselves. So the tactics through this next phase might change of how do we do that, but our end goal is to help the stakeholders be successful. And it's not our job to make them successful, it's our job to provide the tools to support them being able to be successful for themselves. So I think that there's a lot more great opportunities, and there really is this phenomenal feeling of we're all in it together, right? We're all feeling the same strains. We're all feeling the same the same hardships, but at the same time, we're also hearing about all these phenomenal ideas. And I'm going to use Remo from the Pizza Fest, who's the guy who's putting together this great plan. We said to him, I said, is it okay if we share this? And he said, of course it is. I'd like this to happen in every town across Ontario. So, we partnered up with FEO, and they've put this great new guideline together and pushed it into the minister's office so that they can take a look at it. And if we can roll it out across the province and really have it set up as a permanent site in towns across the province so that festival organizers don't have to cancel and they can come in, like that's some incredible, it's some incredible, entrepreneurial spirit to figure out how to do it. But even more, it's so impressive that he's like, yeah, this is free for everybody, right? Let's there's no feeling of, oh no, it's mine. It's let's help the industry. So before I stay on my soapbox for too much longer, let me go back to the script here. And I think, I'm going to look at my Q&A. Are we ready for our first speaker? I'm going to see what's going on here. Oh, I just got a text. Yes, we are. Okay, perfect. All right. So our first speaker is David Coletto, who is the CEO of Abacus Data. In another great feat of collaboration, all of the RTOs, along with Destination Ontario and TIAO, got together to engage Abacus Data to really get a sense of what the new normal is going to look like. So David's going to be sharing some brand new, never seen before data on the insights on the current consumer mindset and perceptions during the COVID-19 reopenings and recovery from a large province-wide survey of travelers with a focus on the central counties and the Toronto areas. So here's what's going to happen. David will be doing the presentation. I'm going to turn this on full screen. I'm going to keep the question and answer box open, and feel free as you're going through, if you have a question, type it in, and then after his presentation, we'll start to go through those questions. And hopefully that all makes sense. And take it away, David.
Well, thanks, Chuck, for the introduction and for inviting me. It's a real pleasure. As Chuck said, this is really exciting. It's the first time I'm going to be presenting results from this survey that we finished last week. I do want to start, I'm just going to share my screen here, by saying I grew up in Richmond Hill, so I know the Central Counties quite well, spent a lot of time there. I now live in Ottawa, Abacus Data. We've got an office in Toronto and Ottawa, but spent most of my life in and around the Toronto area and up in Richmond Hill. There's snow on the ground in this picture. There is no snow there right now, as you all know. We all have lived through the last, 13 and a half weeks of this lockdown and moving into reopening of society, and it's affected us all. And there's no doubt, for all of you who operate businesses or have a deep connection to tourism in the region, the impact has been profound. And so what we wanted to do, and what I'm here to do, is share some insights from a fairly large comprehensive survey we did of Ontarians, and we also did some interviews in Manitoba and Quebec. I'm going to focus on the Ontario results today, but I do also want to take us through kind of where Ontarians have been. And when you think about how our worlds are changing, this picture that I'm going to show you came out a few days ago, and it's from a theater in Germany. a fairly high profile, I think, theater where they play classical music and opera. And this is their attempt at trying to make the current context work, right? And creating a space that visitors, guests will feel comfortable. But when I saw it, it really was a stark reminder of first how awkward and strange a world we live in, and how different it really all is. And so it really put into perspective where we are. So what I'm going to do today is give you some insight into, I think, what some of these findings are not going to be that surprising, but they confirm in some instances some of our deeper concerns about how consumers, guests, travelers are reacting to this pandemic. It also, I think, points a direction to how you can respond to the concerns that consumers have. That's really where I've been focusing a lot of our work on a number of different sectors. So the world's not going to be the same as it was for the foreseeable future. How are we going to react to that? So that's really the key question. How will this pandemic impact on travel in Ontario this year? And I think the three takeaways from my perspective for all of you is, first, as I'll show you from other research we've done over the last 13 and a half weeks, that the public's anxiety about the pandemic is starting to reduce. We are seeing that an extreme level of concern is starting to dissipate, but there is this persistent concern about a second spike, a persistent worry that the virus is still out there, that I can be susceptible to it, whether I'm someone who is particularly vulnerable, if I'm older, if I'm immunocompromised, or if I have loved ones who are any of those things. And that's impacting the questions that travelers, locals, and consumers more broadly are asking of businesses, of organizations they're interacting with. There's no doubt this survey points to what we've already experienced, but even as things start to open up and people start planning in more depth and in more certainty what they're going to do this summer and into the fall, that travel behavior will shift substantially. And I'm going to show you evidence of that from this survey. And that all points to, as business owners and as operators, both in terms of welcoming locals into your businesses as well as travelers from outside the region, is to think about how do you help them? That's the most important question. Mitigate risk. How do you give them control over the space that they're going to occupy, whether that's a hotel room, whether that's a retail space, whether that's a restaurant, you name it, whether it's going back to Canada's Wonderland, as I did so many times as a kid, thinking about how do you mitigate that risk for them and make it easier, make them feel more comfortable venturing out. Because as I'm going to show you, the vast majority of Ontarians are not ready to jump back in and to experience travel again. And we surveyed travelers. So we excluded anyone who didn't typically travel from this survey. As we all know, I've been monitoring this. I actually briefed the Provincial Minister of Finance last week on some of the data we've been tracking, not on the tourism data, but on some broader data. And I'll share some of that with you in a moment. But I now know from a public perspective, regardless of government regulation, government rules around opening, we're clearly now into phase 3 of this crisis. And we started with a reaction to being locked down. It was a reaction to the impact on our employment, on our prospective health, on getting the food and household goods we needed stocked up, and figuring out what to do in this new world. We then moved to a phase that was much more about coping with this new reality. And now that all but, I think, 1 or 2 regions of the province are now into phase 2, or will be come Friday, we're now in this reset phase. So that phase involves an extended period of time until this virus gets fully under control. And under control and getting to phase 4 really means a vaccine or some kind of treatment that severely reduces the risk of infection and gives people confidence that they can go out and do all the things, whether it's how we work, whether it's how we consume, how we shop, how we travel going forward. So this phase 3 now is critical because there's still a lot of uncertainty out there. So just some context very, very briefly before I get into the traveler survey. We've been tracking how Ontarians have been reacting to the pandemic. This is the percentage who say they are extremely worried or worried a lot about coronavirus or COVID-19 at the moment we asked the survey. You can see We've been doing quite a number of surveys. We're doing at least 800 interviews in Ontario for each one of these waves. And so it peaked up in March. It held it more or less until through most of April, but you can see that it has declined, but we're still at a point now where almost 3 out of 10 Ontarians still say they are extremely worried or worried a lot about this pandemic. So the worry curve has flattened and come down a little bit, but there's still quite a number of people who are deeply concerned about that. That's going to have a big impact on certain demographics and their comfort coming out into the market. We also ask what we call a momentum question. So are you getting more worried or less worried over the last few days about the pandemic? And you can see that those two lines came together by the end of April and have basically hovered where about equal numbers say they are getting more worried about the pandemic than less worried. You saw a little bit of a spike at the end of May into early June here where that gap opened up. But as of actually this weekend when we finished our last survey, they've come back together. The point here is that for some, this is a crisis that is waning, that they're ready to get back into the world again. They're becoming more impatient maybe, but for others, there's still this fear of a second spike. There's the fear of the economic impact that this is going to have. And so there's really two Ontarians at work here. All that being said, most people still believe there is a risk of infection out there. Only 12% of Ontarians say that there's a small risk or no risk of getting this virus. So although the numbers are seemingly under control, government signaling we can go back out and do more of what we were doing before March 16th, for a lot of people, that risk is out there. And that is going to be the context to which their decisions are going to be made, right? Where are they going to be willing to travel? What are they willing to do? Are they going to spend, only a day trip? Is it going to be a weekend? Is it going to be a week-long vacation? All those decisions are going to be based on a new set of factors. Price will be important. Obviously, quality and experience will matter as it always has, but things more around safety, about distancing, about control over my space, and about familiarity. Going to places I've been before, as you'll see in our survey, become more important. When we look at this risk of infection across the region, we don't see a lot of variation. So whether you live in the Toronto or Greater Toronto area, whether you live in the Southwest or the East where I am, about the same percentage say that the rate of infection remains high. Similarly, there's no difference across age group, whether you're younger or older, there's still equal numbers. So this perception of risk remains something that I think will constrain some consumers from taking risks, from going outside of their comfort zone. All of this to be said is that 65% of Ontarians in our latest survey still say that they are either really worried or somewhat worried about a second spike. And what we're seeing in the United States now, with a number of states actually having more cases per day than they had before, during the first wave of this pandemic, is a signal to us that going slow, being cautious is really the state of mind for most people. And that fear of that second spike is there. All this to be said, when we ask people, do you think the worst is still to come or the worst is behind us? This is the percentage who say the worst is still to come. It's dropped a lot since early April, but it's basically stayed the same since then, where about a third of Ontarians say, I still think the worst is still to come. And that worst is different depending on who you are. For some, it's economic, understanding the true economic impact of this. For others, it's that fear of a second spike or getting the infection or other implications or consequences of this virus still being out there. The other side of all of this is, we know that this pandemic has had a substantial impact on the economy, on people's income. And what we see is actually a really interesting dynamic that's not often discussed in public. First, when we ask Ontarians, to what extent has this pandemic harmed your financial situation? You can see really two Ontarios in a way. About half say it's had a moderate or great deal of harm to their finances. The rest say, well, not that much or not at all. That's the first piece. So it's a substantial impact to some, no impact to others. But when we reframe the question, we say at the end of the month, for example, do you find that you have more money than usual, about the same as usual, or less than you normally would? And here you see both an opportunity and a threat. The threat is for 4 out of 10 Ontarians, their incomes have been impacted so much, even if some of their costs have come down, that they are left with less money at the end of the month. But for almost 20% of the province, they're saying, actually, I have more money, right? I don't know if it's the same where you are, but in Ottawa, it's impossible to find somebody to either install a new pool or upgrade a pool, because everybody is, realizing that they're going to be staying closer to home. And so finding a pool guy or pool gal, this summer is incredibly difficult. That's a signal to me that some households have more money. They're not spending it on childcare. They're certainly spending it less on gas and because they're not commuting to work as much as they might have been doing. And so if your income hasn't been affected, there's a chance your household budget's actually quite a bit stronger. So on the one hand, you've got some consumers who have more money to spend, and they'll be thinking about, what am I going to be doing over the next 5 months to sort of get out of the home that I've been in for so long. But we also have to keep in mind the impact it's had, particularly on younger consumers, women, those who work in hospitality, in your sector, in retail. They are going to face a much more challenging future, particularly as government programs, if they do phase out after the extension, what are they going to do for income going forward? So that's the quick context of everything. So the big question that our study that we did with your RTO, with all the RTOs across the province, which was a great engagement, and I appreciate Chuck and Tom, the research lead at RTO 6 for helping with this and supporting this project. We wanted to understand what the impact of this is going to have on travel in the province. And so what we did is we did a representative scientific survey of 3,000 travelers, 2,000 of which live in Ontario. So we've got a nice large sample size. As I said, we did about 400 interviews in and around Winnipeg and another 600 interviews around Montreal. So we wanted to understand, for those that are closest to the province, are they going to be venturing in from outside? We have a large sample of those living in the RTO. And so I'll highlight some of those results later. But as you can expect, not a big difference between those living in the central counties and those living in other parts of the province. And the survey was done from June 3rd to 14th. So as Chuck said, very fresh and recent data. So let me get into it. The first thing is, the obvious, and that is, and again, we interviewed travelers. So those who say last year they traveled more than 40 kilometers outside of their community for a leisure trip, not necessarily for business. And so among that cohort, so these are people who already are inclined to travel outside of their community. They are reporting high numbers of people having to postpone or cancel a trip already. 1 out of 5 travelers have said they've had to change the destination. So this just confirms the obvious, but that the impact on travel plans has been substantial and quite widespread. Now, when it comes to getting back in, I alluded to this earlier. When it comes to returning to travel, are you going to be somebody who, for example, jumps back in, maybe sticks your foot in the water, tests it a little bit first, or are you going to be maybe the follower who comes in last, gets back in carefully? And you can see the distribution here. Very few people say they're, like this gentleman, jumping right back into the lake. Instead, you're going to see, I think, like with a lot of other parts of the economy, people slowly looking for cues, hearing stories about how others have experienced it, and are going to be slowly getting back into it. So that is our first signal that even if, the provincial government allows more kinds of events and activities to happen, you may not see a rush of people coming back into it. And I think we've already seen that in some instances, anecdotally, with patios opening in Ottawa. We've been open for about a week and a half. And if you just do a scan of patios, even over the weekend, it was really hot. So that probably played into it. They weren't full yet. And so that's a signal that even if there's a demand to get back out, people are going to be taking their time. Now, one of the good news stories from this survey, as you can expect, and I think Minister MacLeod highlighted it and to Chuck's comments earlier, if there's ever been a moment where you can get Ontarians to engage with destinations in their own province, this is it. And the data clearly points to it. So this is the percentage of people who say, I will not feel comfortable traveling to these destinations within the next 6 months or more. So, you know, traveling internationally, traveling to the US, for over 2/3 of travelers, they're saying that's not going to happen. I don't feel comfortable doing it. And it's not necessarily because they can't. You know, the border's still closed to non-essential travel, so we can't go to the US. But even if I could, you know, 2/3 are saying, I'm not going to feel comfortable doing it for a while. At least that's my time horizon now. Even half say traveling to another province is off. So you've got this, I think, opportunity in which most travelers in the province are saying, well, where will I go? And when we look at this from a broader perspective, so this is the full question we asked, how long will it take before you feel comfortable traveling out of town but within your region? So say you live in downtown Toronto and you want to go out to Canada's Wonderland or out to, you know, Bradford or Durham. You know, most people are saying, I'm going to feel comfortable doing it either now, that's 33% saying I'm ready to do it, or within a few months, right? And so their time horizon is, I can see myself doing this maybe in August, maybe September. I'm going to not be so keen to get out right away. But I think as reality starts to hit with these folks, that 27%, maybe even that 14% moves closer to the as soon as possible as they get more comfortable with it. But you can see as we get farther away from where they live, the percentage of travelers in Ontario who feel comfortable doing it within a short time period starts to shrink. And so that's a signal to me that this is your moment to not only engage locals in your businesses and your attractions, but also to reach out to Ontarians in other parts of the province to come here. So that's the first key, and that's a good outcome. But what kinds of trips will travelers feel comfortable doing? One of the things we did in this survey is we asked people on last year or 2 years ago, what kinds of trips did you take? How did you get there? Where did you stay? What kind of trip was it? What did you do when you went? And then we wanted to understand, okay, looking ahead, what do you think you're going to be doing? And so we can understand what those who, for example, stayed in hotels last year, are they comfortable staying in hotels this year? That would be an example. So the first thing is not surprising. This is the percentage of travelers who said they did, the first column here is those who said they did this last year. So they went on a day trip, they spent a trip overnight, or they went on a week or more long vacation. So you can see the distribution from last year. And then here, this year. And then the second column is those same travelers and what they did last year. And the way to interpret this is day trips are still pretty much in most people's wheelhouse. 65% say they're going to likely do that or feel comfortable doing that this year, compared to the 75% who did it last year. So the gap is only 10 points. But as you extend the time horizon for the type of trip they might do, the gap grows. So 47% say they'd feel comfortable going to do an overnight trip or planning to do an overnight trip, and a third say they're planning to do a week or more. Good news, one side of the coin, there's lots of travelers out there who are looking to book these kinds of trips and are thinking about it. The bad news is it's far fewer, particularly on the overnight and the week-long trips, than it was last year. So you are going to see a 20 to 25, maybe even a 30% reduction if these numbers hold and people's comfort level remains consistent in the volume of people that are going to be venturing out and doing these kinds of trips. So the story and the conclusion here is be prepared for some, overnight weekender or week-long vacationers, but prepare yourself and optimize for those day trippers who are going to be looking to leave and come back to their home within the same day. At the same time, given people's concern about the pandemic and the virus, we see clear signals that people are going to be much more likely to want to venture to small towns or rural areas, to smaller cities, than venturing into a large, dense urban center. So that plays well to many parts of your community, that even people living in downtown Toronto will be looking to get out because distancing is much harder. There's far fewer activities. And if, as I'm going to show you in a moment, outdoor activities, particularly in the next few months, are going to be top of mind, finding space, finding outdoors in these smaller, less dense places is going to be something that's going to be really important to people. And that's what they're telling us fairly clearly in this survey. Also, it's pretty obvious, but it's worth repeating. We've done some interesting work also with the RV sector. 2020 is going to be the year of the road trip. This is the percentage of travelers who say they're comfortable doing these kinds of trips, or they see themselves doing them this year. 87% see no risk or discomfort in getting in their car and going somewhere. But you can see when it comes to other forms of transit or modes, train, airplane, much lower. And what's important here is even those who took flights last year, for example, to go on their vacation or to go traveling, only about half today say they're comfortable doing it. So even among those who travel, like myself, who travel a lot, there's still a lot of apprehension about getting on a plane. And so again, that's further reinforcing the idea that many Ontarians will not be venturing too far from home, and using their car will be the primary way they visit you if they come into your community. Where are they going to stay if they go on a weekend or overnight or week-long trip? What we see here is a real preference for, and this is how I describe it, accommodations in which you have, as a guest, a lot more control over the space in which you're going to sleep, or the space in which you're going to stay. So a lot of people who own a second property say that they're going to go to their second property. So not surprising, cottagers are going to spend more time, partly because they can. If they're working from home and they have internet connection, they can do that from their cottage or their cabin. Staying with family or friends, and camping and RVing. So camping in a tent at a site or bringing an RV is important. I do some work with basically the Airbnb for RVing, RV Easy. We did a survey earlier this year that showed, far more people who would have never thought of RVing this year are considering it as an option. And so they're seeing a huge uptick in the number of rentals happening on their site, and that's confirming the data that we see here. On the other hand, there's far less openness to staying in more what I call commercial type accommodations. So a chain hotel, a local boutique hotel, or B&B. And this is the percentage of people who stayed in these types of accommodations last year on their vacation or on their trips, who would feel comfortable doing it today. So again, you have almost half of people who typically do this and would normally feel comfortable and make it part of their trip, saying they're not really comfortable doing it. And that's a signal that again, that volume and how consumers are thinking about where they stay and what kind of trip they do is mixed up with the risk they perceive in coming to many of these places. We also explored what people want to do, not surprising, outdoor activities was at the top of the list. So 69% of travelers said they'd feel comfortable doing outdoor activities, hiking, anything that allows them to be outside, create some distance. Food and drink is also still high up on the list, particularly among those who love. The foodies out there are still looking for those kinds of experiences. So, whether that's going to certain kinds of farms that have the ability to tour them, whether it's going to restaurants that have an outdoor space, distilleries or breweries. I know you don't have many wineries in your area, but those are things that are still can be attractive. You can see that, for many people, amusement parks and zoos, given that you have one of the biggest in the province in your region, is going to be a hard sell for some. And even 41% of those who visited an amusement park, a zoo, or an aquarium last year, 41% say they'd feel comfortable doing it this year. So even there's a big gap between what I did last year and what I'm going to feel comfortable doing this year. And that's, again, a signal that there's some change. Now, one of the things that I always think about is if this new normal won't allow you to operate and invite guests and consumers in as you normally would, understanding why they traveled last year and why they might travel this year, which I think is very much going to be the same, allows you to frame your offering to these consumers and really try to meet them where they want to be. And so when we ask people, why did you travel? Which of these are reasons why you traveled last year around this time? And you can see, spending time with loved ones, getting away from the everyday, enjoying the warm weather. Almost everybody said that was a factor in why they went and did it. For many, though, exploring a new place, trying something new, was a big driver in the choices they made. That's likely going to be less important this year. I think even in my own experience planning my summer vacation, I'm going next week up to Gravenhurst, and I'll talk more about that because there's an interesting anecdote there. That's where my grandparents had their cottage. I knew that area well, and that's why we chose to go there. We're gonna stay in a Residence Inn, a hotel, and just sort of, figure out, ride our bikes around the region, look for something new. It's new from where I live in Ottawa, but it's still familiar. And I think a lot of consumers are gonna be looking for that familiar going forward. Attending a specific event is unlikely going to be a driver for many this year, given that there's not going to be, any music festivals or no Stratford Festival, no Shaw Festival. All those things are going to be limited in terms of what is going to pull people out. The other part of the survey is we really wanted to understand, how do you best serve these guests or customers or consumers as they venture out of their homes? What are they going to be thinking about? And one of the things to me that is very different in this current context are a bunch of questions that really emerged out of our survey when we asked people, what matters to you? What's going to be important? And these are questions I suspect many travelers are going to be asking before they start planning a trip, and as they venture out and make decisions while they're there at a destination about what they're going to do. One of the big ones that's preventing, I think, people from imagining traveling to other parts of the world or the United States, or even venturing outside of the province, is this question of, will I need to self-isolate after? We still have some, confusion around, if I travel to British Columbia, do I have to isolate for 14 days while I'm there? And if I come home, do I have to do that? Certainly, if we travel outside of Canada, that's going to be the case. That's preventing people from even considering going outside of the country, even if they felt the risk wasn't great to them, that the inconvenience of having to self-isolate when they get home, or even having to isolate when they're there, makes the trip almost useless in their mind. Another key question is, can I distance myself from others? Is it the kind of activity, the kind of venue, the kind of location that's going to make it easy to do that? For some consumers, it's not going to be an issue. They can put a mask on, and because they don't feel vulnerable to the disease or the virus, they will take more risks. But for a big part of the traditional travel segment, particularly older consumers, boomers, retirees, that's a key factor. And that's a question that you have to be able to answer and help create comfort for that guest or consumer before they come to your location or your destination. There's also a real, and we've seen a lot of this in the research we've done, a lot of confusion about what the rules are, about what I can expect if I come to your destination. So making sure your communications about what protocols you're following, about how you as a business are taking this seriously is going to be really important. And making that clear, whether that through social channels you might use to communicate to customers, whether it's through your website, whether it's through a phone call that somebody might make to your staff, is everybody well trained to have a clear, consistent, story and message about what you are doing to create a safe place for people to come and enjoy, some leisure time. And then another thing that's important, and I think this is why we're seeing this preference to much more local or close to home kind of experiences, is people do worry about how easy it is to get home if they have to. So if they do, heavens forbid, contract a virus or get themselves into some kind of trouble, can I get home quickly? Is going to be a key question. So even, it's going to be hard for me to get me living in Ottawa to consider, traveling down to Windsor or Southwestern Ontario because of the distance it's going to take to get home if I have to. So I suspect you're going to see, 100 to 150 kilometers, maybe 200 kilometers being much more comforting for people because it allows them to get home quickly if they have to. One of the things we did in the survey is tried to gauge where people are on an either or kind of question. So we said, which of these comes closest to your view? Are you somebody who's going to prefer to stay away from a lot of people, or will you be okay being close to other people? You can see 80% say, I'm going to prefer to stay away from a lot of people. Similar numbers say, I will prefer to stay closer to home than travel to destinations far away. There are some who want to go far away and don't see a risk, but the vast majority of travelers are going to be staying home. Most important, and this is I think this is the frame in which you should, communicate and engage customers going forward, is this idea is now's the time to play it safe. This is not going to be a moment where people are going to be checking off things from their bucket lists or going off to Machu Picchu and hiking up, the Inca Trail or anything like that. They are going to be playing it safe, looking for experiences that are comforting, that are familiar, that are closer to home. And that's just, clear in all this data that we get to. And you can see even 70% or so are saying, I will choose destinations I was already planning to travel to. I have comfort, familiarity, and so on. What else will matter to these consumers based on our survey? It's clear, and this is not surprising, cleanliness will be more important than ever. Almost everybody admits that. They are more likely to visit a destination they've been before. Large majority saying that's the case. And for some, and I referred back to the data I shared on finances, there's going to be some price sensitivity for some. For others who have a little bit more money, it's not going to be an issue. But the recession has impacted, discretionary spending for quite a number of people. So thinking about affordable, safe, options is really going to be what's on most people's menu going forward. And I mentioned that I'm going next week to Gravenhurst, and that story was really interesting because we were just finishing the survey, and things happening in my own life reflected what these results were saying. So my wife and I we're going to go to Gravenhurst, as I said, stay in a hotel there for a week and ride our bikes and sort of just get away from Ottawa and the city for a little bit, maybe do some swimming. But I invited my parents, who live in Richmond Hill, just off Yonge Street, north of Highway 7, and my sister, who lives in Richmond Hill as well. And I said, well, we haven't seen each other for 14 weeks. We've rented this place that has a kitchen so we can cook for ourselves. Why don't we all come up and we can spend a week together? Or they were going to come up for a few days. And at first, my parents were like, yeah, let's do it. We haven't seen you. It's going to be a nice change of pace. And there was this doubt in their minds, I know was there. And just this weekend, they called on FaceTime and they said, David, we love you. We want to see you, but we really don't feel comfortable leaving our community, leaving our home. And my sister, who has a young son who my parents look after, also said, well, look, because Julian might get exposed to something, and then we don't want to expose our parents. My parents are 66 and 64. So, they're not young, but they're not, I would say, too old yet. That risk of the infection was just too much for them. So there's an anecdote, a story that lines up with what we're seeing, particularly for older consumers who were just really still concerned about the risk involved and how that might play out. So, when we get to the bottom line then, and we ask people, what's the likelihood that you're going to, venture out and travel within the province? And have you already started booking? 10% of travelers in Ontario say they have already booked a trip within the province already. I'm one of them. I'm already, I've booked this trip and it's happening. Where another 23% say they started planning. Those are, not too high numbers. There's some people thinking about it and starting to plan, but I think even at this stage, as summer has started, you can see 42% of travelers say they're going to start planning something once they perceive this to be all over. And I think that's not likely going to be where they land, because this will not all be over for a while. But it does show you the hesitation here in people really, making trips that are going to require them to leave their community or spend an extended period of time away from home. So when we ask them, when do you think you'll feel comfortable making travel plans in Ontario? You can see these numbers aren't that high either. So, 22% say July, 35% say about August or September. There's about a quarter of people who say, I'm not going to be making any plans or feel comfortable doing it. And these are travelers who have traveled last year until there's, this virus is really, really under control. And so the risk of a second spike, the fear of getting the virus, it's all playing into people's heads in how they are making plans. And so to me, there's some signals here. If you are a hotel or an accommodation, I think more than ever, it's important to have a lot of flexibility built into your bookings. If you're, a tour company, or if you do some kind of events, same kind of thing. I think you need to really let the consumer feel confident that if their own confidence level changes, if circumstances change, they will be able to cancel a trip. You need to, I think, create that opportunity for them to venture out and start making bookings. I'll give you another example. I'm thinking about my wife's 40th birthday is in September, and we love to travel and we wanted to do something. We've actually booked hotels in 3 different destinations, one in California, which we don't think is going to happen, one in Kelowna and one in Ontario. In case that any of those can't happen, we still have somewhere we can go. And I think for those travelers who really want to get out there, being able to do that, I think will be important. The other part of this, which we explored in this survey, is how comfortable are locals welcoming tourists into their community? It was a big, question that came out of some of the, I would call it, debates around cottage countries and whether, those who live in, say, Muskoka or Kawarthas want those from Toronto or elsewhere coming into their communities. And you can see that while people are far more likely to say, I would feel comfortable people coming from communities near me or other parts of the province than, say, coming from the United States. Very few Ontarians want any Americans coming up here. And so support for keeping that border closed is very high. You can still see a lot of hesitation, that there's not a lot of, it's not overwhelming in terms of the numbers. So you are also dealing with how welcoming will communities be? And it's not just your businesses, but the public more generally, and the perception. And this is really important. I do a lot of work around perception. I think it's so important to understanding behavior, that if I'm a traveler thinking about booking a trip, and luckily if I'm in Ontario, my license plate is the same as everybody else's. So you can't, you don't know I'm from elsewhere unless the car dealership that I bought it from says Ottawa on it. But we heard stories, for example, in British Columbia, where you had Albertans going to BC and people with Alberta plates, having some damage to their cars, or notes being left saying, get the heck out of here, it's unsafe. That's part of the psychology that's playing into this. So anything, if you as a community really want to welcome people, it's also incumbent upon building confidence among those who live in your community to welcome those from outside it, and make sure that they feel comfortable that you're doing everything that you can. Very briefly, and then I want to quickly go to questions. We had 290 respondents who live in the central counties, and that's a large sample. So we can actually look at, and I know when Tom, the research lead at Central Counties Tourism, gets the data set, he's going to have a field day with it, and he'll do a lot more to understand what people are thinking and doing. But I was able to give you just a sense of, what locals are thinking. This is the average number of trips that people in our survey said they took last year that were 40 kilometers long or more. And so you can see that, those in the RTO are about the same as surrounding RTOs. And I use anyone that's borders yours compared to the rest of Ontario. So on average, people are saying they're doing about 5 trips a year in which they are, driving or traveling more than 40 kilometers outside from their home to do that. And what we see, this is the same question I showed earlier, but only of those RTO residents, and understanding what Chuck referred to as this hyper-local opportunity, even among those who live in Durham and York, they don't plan to go too far away from Durham and York. And so that's a further proof point of that opportunity you have if you can't easily attract people from other regions. And I know your RTO doesn't have a lot of visitors as would, say, Niagara Falls or Ottawa or even Toronto in terms of coming from other parts of the province. And so you already rely more, I think, on more local, quote, tourists. But this reinforces that they're no different, that they will not be traveling too far away from their own communities. And so there's an opportunity here to engage them. And I come back to this, it's the same pattern. Why did they travel last year? Well, ask yourselves, how can I help them or serve them in these ways, right? Help them get away from the everyday. how do you do that when I travel maybe 20 or 30 kilometers? It's possible in some parts of the counties to do that. You've got significant rural areas. You've got great amenities in some more of the suburban parts of the communities. How do you allow them to get away from that every day? Maybe enjoy the warm weather, spend time with loved ones. If they can experience something new, that's something for you to all think about. So to wrap up, I know there's been a lot of data and I'm sure there's lots of questions, so I'll just get to the punchline. What should you bet on as stakeholders, as business owners, as community leaders in the central counties? I think first is, one, concerns about the pandemic are lingering. They're going down, the intensity is dropping, but there's still this concern about a second spike. There's still a concern about contracting the virus, about spreading it to loved ones. And that will, for the foreseeable future, I think be the primary driver to consumer behavior going forward. Now, travelers, as I said, will be staying closer to home. I think we knew that, but this data clearly confirms it. There are some who will take risks and will want to go and take advantage, actually, of a period where there's not going to be a lot of tourists traveling, but they're far fewer in number than those looking to stay closer to home. So that's the new, I think, normal for this summer and into the fall. And we'll see, hopefully not into next year as well. Expect reduced traffic from those coming from outside the region. You'll likely continue until people feel more comfortable exposing themselves to the risk that's out there, or until that risk is more or less gone. And so what that means for you, I think, if you're thinking about how does this affect my business, how does this affect my destination, first of all, I think it's really important to engage your existing customers, to talk to them, to share what you're doing and how you can make their summer interesting and more enjoyable than it might otherwise be if they're stuck at home. Think about all of those condo dwellers in Toronto who have been stuck in 600 to 1,000 square feet for the last 14 months, have been told don't assemble in parks and you can't go to restaurants. They're going to be looking to do things. So how do you make it easy for them to do it? How do you communicate to them? Mitigate risks for them, make it easy for them, and really serve their local interests and make your service offering even more localized than you might otherwise do. The last point I'll say is, as challenging and difficult as these results are, what's clear is that people don't like this. This is not going to be something that they're going to be comfortable with for a long time. And so travelers will come back. I think there's a lot of data here to help support advocacy work, to talk to the province, talk to the federal government about what they can do to support you, because the evidence is pretty clear that this summer will not get back to normal rates of travel and consumption than we've seen in a very long time. And it's not because a lot of people or all people don't have the money to do it. It's because fundamentally, many of them just don't feel comfortable yet venturing out. So I will stop there. It's a whole bunch of data. This has been really, I hope, really useful. If you have any questions that I can't answer in the next 20 or so minutes, here's how you can reach me. And I will make sure that this deck is shared with the team and I think I already have, so they can make it available to you as they wish. So Chuck, I'll hand it back to you and maybe we can answer some questions together.
Yeah, I think we're going to be limited on the time for questions just because we're close to 11:30 and poor Beth was supposed to start at 11:15. However, having said that, a lot of the things that are in that resonated well, and I think Stefan really did a good job of summing it up. We've already positioned ourselves as the road trip destination, and we're certainly going to to be able to exploit that and allow people to come back. And then Eric wrote a note saying that some of the data is proving true in the theater, where right now, the testing the waters, their subscription rate for next year is at about 40 to 45% of what it was. Hey, but at least it's at 40 and 45%. We're just showing there are people who are willing to test the waters. Our own Golf in Ontario product, which is now a sort of a pan-provincial product, they're actually taking more calls than ever before. It used to be, we used to, market out to the US, but now we're, in the Ontario market, and there's still a great need for people to want to get out and about and do these activities that you're saying. So yes, the numbers seem grim, but I think that our region, just where it's situated, we've always said it's been a blessing and a curse to be right on, as I say, if Toronto were the carrot cake, we're that rich, creamy cream cheese icing on top. But it's now more so than ever a blessing to be that close to a large population that is, even if only 30% are willing to get out for a day trip or an overnight in close by to their homes, we are where they are going to go. So there's some fantastic opportunities. There was a question from Caroline. You're talking about the reasons why people traveled in 2019. Did you ask if, what the reasons would be to travel in 2020? And if you did, was it the same?
We did, and because we wanted to compare, and there's lots of data I wasn't able to fit into this. I already went over my time. Sorry about that, Chuck. We did, and they are different. They're much more focused on visiting family, on doing outdoor things than they would have been last year. So as you would expect, all of the things that first they can't do, there are no music festivals, there are no kind of what I call mass entertainment where you have lots of people crammed together. Yeah. Those aren't going to be reasons people are traveling. They know that. And so it's going to be much more about visiting family they haven't seen in a long periods of time. If you think about my example, that was really one of the reasons. Or getting away from their everyday life and finding calm and peace in a place that's different from what they've done for the last 14 weeks. And for a lot of travelers, they had, as you saw, they've already had to cancel or postpone a lot of trips in this period. So that pent up desire to get away is still there, and to do things. And many of them have kids who they've had to teach and school for the last, and that's going to be another factor in all of this. We didn't get into the depth of parents, but that's a whole other segment of the travel market that you can appeal to, because they, while there will be some camps and stuff, they're not going to be as used as much. And so entertainment for children will also be, I think, a key target for your area as well.
Perfect. Yeah. And I've got 3 kids. I understand the plight of parents. I sent 2 of them up to Algonquin Park this week to go canoeing just to get them out of my hair. Anyway, so this presentation will be available on our B2B website. It's being recorded, so I think we will also have a link to the recording. More importantly is that when we get the full data set from you guys, we will put the full data set up, and then I'm going to put Tom to work breaking out the RTO6 as a comparison, so we can see what our residents are feeling, and we might be able to do the same for that GTA or the Greater Toronto Horseshoe area, and see how do we best assist. In my mind, as we've been starting to talk reopening, there's 3 key things we need to do. Number 1 is we need to be able to get our businesses reopened in some semblance of what the new normal looks like in terms of their ability to open within the guidelines for health and safety. Once we do that, this presentation really shows that one of the things we need to do at a municipal level, at a regional level, at central counties, is to educate the public as to the reasons why it will be safe to get out and travel. Give them that sense of comfort that you were talking about. Tell those stories and make it so that more people will feel safe venturing into their neighborhoods and into neighboring cities. Once we've got those 2 things, once we have businesses open and consumers feeling comfortable, then we need to start promoting and telling the stories of the businesses so people will choose to travel to those businesses and keep those doors open and keep the money flowing in. So I want to thank you, David. Thank you so much for that presentation. You can see lots of comments saying how great it was, and we will continue to work with you through these numbers. And we will also, on our B2B site, we'll put your contact information in case any of our stakeholders have some additional questions. So
sounds great. Thanks again, everyone.
Take care. Next up is Beth Potter, who is here to chat about all things TIAO. She's been doing an incredible job with keeping the province informed in terms of what you need as stakeholders. She's been advocating and advocating. I don't think she's slept in 13 weeks, but she's looking fantastic. And let's go right over to her. And same thing, if you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A and I will monitor accordingly. Over to you, Beth. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. So let me just grab. No, it's not liking it. Okay. Well, I can do this just talking. I do a lot of that, so that's fine. So first of all, thanks Chuck and Kelly and the entire Central Counties team for having me here to speak to you today as part of your annual general meeting. I wish we could all be together celebrating another successful year for Central Counties and our entire tourism industry after a record-breaking 2019. But of course, this predicament we find ourselves in and this disease that we are all fighting has completely turned our world upside down. And the normal now means we're all talking to each other from our makeshift offices, kitchens, and living rooms. I know from our own experience when we held the TIAO AGM virtually last month, it can be difficult in the current circumstances to reflect on the previous 12 months worth of work. But we can't forget the progress that our industry has been making in recent years and the integral role that tourism now holds as a key player in our provincial economy. Ontario's tourism industry created the economic environment to help start new businesses, create jobs, and bring billions in spending, receipts, and taxes into Ontario. So today I'm just going to explain briefly who TIAO is and what our role in the industry is, and then discuss how we have reacted to COVID-19 and how we envision the way forward for the tourism industry. So just a quick overview of TIAO. I think most of you are fairly familiar with us, but our organization is recognized as the voice of the tourism industry by the provincial government. We advocate for the importance of Ontario's diverse tourism industry and business community. Our membership is comprised of regional tourism organizations, destination marketing organizations, sector associations, businesses, educational institutions, and suppliers. Our industry, is 200,000 businesses strong, and we speak on behalf of them and the 400,000 employees that help contribute $5 billion in provincial tax contributions. Our members reflect the diverse tourism offering in the province and range from small family-owned businesses to world-renowned tourism attractions. We see our job not only ensuring the front line of our industry is heard in the corridors of power, but also to reshape the way the tourism industry is regarded in public and economic policy. So a lot has happened in the past 3 months, and it feels like we've been living through the restrictions of COVID-19 for a lifetime. As the pandemic spread towards Europe, frontline tourism operators started to report to us immediately an avalanche of cancellations from nervous travelers. We had been experiencing a boom in international visitors from places like China, but in March it became clear that all international travel was starting to evaporate. At this point, we made a series of strategic decisions about how we wanted to position ourselves during the crisis. The industry is a diverse sector, a patchwork quilt of small, medium, and large-size enterprises in every part of the province. So we made the decision to position ourselves as a source of accurate and reliable information. In those first days of March, we created a specific COVID-19 section on our website, providing the latest government updates, information on where to source PPE, and federal government guidance on cleaning and maintaining a healthy work environment. We were shocked to see the number of businesses that came to us asking for support in finding out the most basic of information. Ontario declared a state of emergency on March 17th, restricting physical movement and closing non-essential businesses, quickly followed by an agreement between the US and Canada to close the border. It was inevitable that the tourism industry was going to be catastrophically affected. It was at this point we moved to crisis communication and transparent engagement processes within the industry and with government. It bears repeating that our work and goals changed almost overnight due to COVID-19. Prior to the pandemic, our policy and advocacy work focused on ensuring that political, economic, and regulatory environments allowed for the continued exponential growth of tourism in the province. This shifted in March to working with as many tourism businesses as working to ensure as many tourism businesses as possible remained economically viable so that they can reopen when it is safe to do so and continue to drive the economy and grow jobs in every region of the province. We started weekly conference call meetings with individual sectors of the tourism industry, encompassing our members and the way that they are made up. We wanted to know what was happening on the front line. We wanted to know what the industry needed immediately so that we could feed that information directly to the province and to the federal governments. We created an industry-wide survey through our evidence generation strategy that helped to paint a picture of what was happening. This proved to be a vital component of our work moving forward. It gave us real-time information on layoffs, temporary closures, year-on-year revenue comparisons, and the industry's take-up of the wage subsidy and commercial rent support programs. And I'll just add a footnote here to say that we have shared those surveys, the survey questions, with our colleagues across the country so that other provinces are collecting the same data in the same format. And that will help us as we look back on this when the pandemic is behind us to understand the impact across the country. The seismic drop in revenues meant that almost immediately tourism businesses were forced to lay off large sections of their payroll, pull the shutters down, and close. What became further evident was that if they didn't receive help via commercial rent relief, wage subsidy support, interest-free loans, and direct financial aid for capital expenditures, they would close permanently. To its credit, government reacted quickly, not only in terms of economic support, but also in opening up clear lines of dialogue. The provincial government asked TIAO to sit on Minister Lisa MacLeod's tourism advisory committees and later on a series of panels designed to pool industry thinkers to craft a provincial-wide plan to support tourism through and after COVID-19. The federal government rolled out several programs to support individuals and businesses, and I'm sure many of you have grappled with all of the acronyms as you consider which program might benefit you or your business. The Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy, the Canadian Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance, increased access to employment insurance, access to $40,000 in loans. They've all played their part in answering some of the immediate problems. However, some of these programs initially didn't simply go far enough. And thanks to our lines of communication with government, we were able to join other industry leaders to get concessions on an expanded wage subsidy scheme, and more recently, the temporary halt of commercial evictions in Ontario. Yet in some cases, the application process for this government support was far too complex and onerous and alienated some of the very people it was meant to support. In response to concerns over some of the bureaucratic procedures required to claim government support, TIAO produced simple how-to-apply guidelines for our members and the wider industry for support. This helped to relieve the pressure on individuals and business owners as they were able to call on reliable and easy to understand information. You can find all of this information and a lot of FAQs on common mistakes on the front side of our website. We created easy to share infographics that have been shared by thousands of people across social media. Throughout COVID-19, we found that producing simple and informative social media posts has been one of the most successful ways to reach employers and employees throughout this crisis. TIAO has also worked with the World Travel and Tourism Council to produce international guidelines and protocols for all sectors of our industry to safely reopen. These protocols are designed to give businesses and customers confidence on what to expect in terms of health and safety to protect both employees and customers. There are 9 available now, and the newest ones cover attraction, short-term rentals, and car rentals, and have only just been uploaded to our website today. Also, through our work with the World Travel and Tourism Council, we've been able to coordinate with Minister MacLeod and Minister Elliott to prepare for the Safe Travels stamp. It's a consumer-facing certification, which we hope to roll out across the province in the weeks to come. This is part of an international effort to deliver a consistent and clear message to travelers that they will know what to expect when they arrive at your business. So partnering with the WTTC Safe Travels program, we will also be able to provide information through the Canadian Border Services agents to all guests who enter Canada and Ontario via plane or train. Our goal, as I said, is to have a seamless rollout of the Safe Travels certification program so that consumers, whether hyper-local, Canadian, or international, know what they can expect from businesses that have this certification. And I'll tell you right now, the certification is going to be easy and it's not going to cost you anything to participate. This week, we received the news that Toronto and Peel region have been allowed to enter stage 2 of Ontario's reopening process, leaving just one region left. We saw Niagara Falls reopen and large sections of the economy slowly reopen. And while we're still very much in the middle of the crisis phase, TIAO is starting to turn our attention and efforts to what is coming next for our industry. We've presented to the Ontario Legislature's Standing Committee on Finance and Economic Affairs about what we think the tourism industry needs to survive and recover. We've told the politicians that there must be clear and transparent processes for business to open safely, and that the financial burdens for businesses to prepare to open, we told the politicians that there must be a clear and transparent process for businesses to open safely, and that the financial burdens for businesses to prepare to open need to be available to them. We need to make sure that our businesses in this industry don't permanently close because they are vital to supporting local economic health. We talked about the need for that continued financial support in order to meet new health and safety protocols and guidelines. Leisure and tourism behaviors are going to change. You've just heard a lot about that from David. And in order to rebuild trust with customers, businesses are going to have to remodel floor plans, expand outdoor spaces, and purchase PPE. That requires spending capital that many businesses just spent in the past 3 months, and they've been surviving on that money, and now they don't have it. So we're going to need to continue to find ways to help them access that equipment and the money to pay for it. We need continued investment in our labor force, in our infrastructure, destinations, and attractions. Ontarians are being asked to rediscover their province, and this summer is going to be about hyper-local tourism. To do what we have to do that, we have to advertise and enhance our offer wherever possible. We are faced with an enormous and ongoing challenge, but the reaction and the collaboration on show from our industry has given me the confidence that if we are given the support we ask for, we will not only get through COVID-19, but also come out stronger on the other side. So just before I finish, I'd be remiss if I didn't share a few opportunities with you. So first of all, thanks to the support of the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries, membership in TIAO for 2020 is free. And if you're interested in taking advantage of that and adding your voice to the conversations we are having with government, I would encourage you to send us an email at membership@tiaontario.ca. And then completely not COVID related, the Ontario Tourism Awards of Excellence nominations are still open until June 30th, and we will be having the Ontario Tourism Summit, although we'll be doing it virtually, but we will be having it on October 27th and 28th. And we're pretty excited about some of the things that we're discovering that we can do in a virtual format, and we look forward to speaking with you, to sharing new ideas, to learning from our colleagues, and networking and raising a glass together in October. Thank you very much for having me, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Beth, thank you so much. I cannot stress to anyone who's still on the, all of you on the call, how important the work that they are doing has been to further the cause for our stakeholders. If you haven't already, write down TIAontario.ca and go to that website and take a look at everything that's happening. I've been in this business a long time. I've been on the TIAO board for just finished 6 years, 2 terms. The amount of policies and processes that have been pushed through because of the hard work of TIAO has been incredible. And really, the stars are all aligning. In our minister, Minister McLeod, she is a true champion of the stakeholders. She is feeling the pain that you are feeling. You can see it. You can hear it in her voice. She wants to help in any way she can. She has been asking all of us to do deputation. She wants the rest of her peers to know what she's dealing with on a regular basis. I think this government has been pretty fantastic at trying to do everything in their power to help us out. And Beth, you're a big reason for that. So thank you. Let me just open up the Q&A here. Oh, Eleanor just put up the website. So if there are no questions for Beth, I would suggest you all become members and test the water, because it is well worth doing. And that's about it. So Beth, thank you so much. And with that, I think that's it. That's the end of this AGM. I really want to. Oh yeah, I just got a text saying, remember there's free membership this year. So it's worth joining. See everything they're doing, and next year you'll realize just why they're so important to this industry. But that's it for this portion of for the AGM. I really want to thank everyone for spending some time with us. I know that it's difficult to find time between everything that you have to do. So that's phenomenal that we had so many people on the call today. We will keep things updated on our website. We want to make sure that you're getting as much. Oh, sorry, I'm getting more text. So there will be a survey about this event sent to you shortly. So please make sure that you send that out and fill that in and send it back to us. And oh yeah, I forgot to read that part. That happens. And that's it. So thank you. I'm reminding the board members, please stay on the call because we have to move right into our board meeting. Everyone else, thank you so much. We are here to help you. So please, we are only as good as what we know. If you need information, if you need our help, you let us know and we will help you out from us, or we will point you in the right direction of how to do it. And TIAO is the same way. So thank you.